Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Tapia, and many of you don't know, but I spend most of my free time on the internet. And usually on the internet, I'm just looking for new articles to read. I watch a bunch of YouTube videos, trying to keep up with the stock market and see how the world is doing. However, this week I found a very interesting article titled, "Storage Company Must Pay Airman $60,000 After Selling His Property While He Was Deployed." So as I was reading the title of the article, I got a little bit more curious and decided to look into it a little bit more. And it was found that a storage company from Massachusetts sold the belongings of a technical sergeant in the Air Force while he was deploying Qatar. However, one thing that they did not know is that they need to get a court order from a federal judge allowing them to sell that legally. As a result, the Department of Justice got involved and they filed a lawsuit against the moving company, which resulted in them settling and ordering to pay the airmen $60,000, as well as paying a fine of $5,000 and implement new training guidelines so that this doesn't happen again in the future. And this got me thinking, like, how many people in the military know about the Servicemental Civil Relief Act? As a young airman, I didn't have the opportunity to know all of this stuff. And I think the Servicemental Civil Relief Act is something that every military member needs to know. And as a result, I'm making this video so you know at least the top 5 protections that the Servicemental Civil Relief Act can help you with. And if only one person finds it helpful, this video will be worth it. Now, one thing I do want to mention, that this is not any legal or financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes, and you don't have to listen to a random guy on YouTube telling you what to do. But if you have any questions, always contact your local legal office at your military facility, since every situation is different and they could probably help you a lot better than a guy on YouTube. So the Servicemental Civil Relief Act was enacted to provide legal and financial protection for those people who are serving in the military right now. Now, the Servicemental Civil Relief Act applies to active duty members like the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard, members on the reserve component when they are serving on active duty orders, members of the National Guard when they're mobilized under federal court orders for more than 30 consecutive days, or active duty commissioned officers of the Public Health Service or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So let's start with number 1. Under the Servicemental Civil Relief Act, you are protected against eviction. So you and your family cannot be evicted due to non-payment of rent without a court order, regardless of local laws or state laws. However, this protection only applies if the house that you're renting is below $3,991, and that's as of 2020, so this amount can change every year. This does not mean that you should not pay your rent. So this protection is only there in the event that you and your family are unable to pay your rent due to your military service. So for example, any mistake in your finance, or in the case of a government shutdown that prevents you from paying your rent. Now, in order to be protected by this, you actually have to go apply at the courthouse. And the courthouse would usually provide a 90-day delay on any eviction proceedings, and usually can do some lease modifications in ways that is agreeable for you and your landlord. Moving on to number 2. So service members have the ability to terminate their home and auto leases without any penalty. However, in order to terminate your house lease, you actually have to meet certain criteria. You can't just go out of nowhere and go talk to your landlord and tell them, I want to terminate my lease because I found a nicer apartment, or I just want to move out sooner. Now, one of the criteria that you can use to actually terminate your lease is a PCS, or permanent change of station. This means that the military is actually ordering you to actually move from one base to another, which can be to a nearby state, other side of the country, or the other side of the world. The second criteria that you actually meet is that you actually have orders to deploy for 90 days or more. So usually you aren't within your duty station, but they actually ask you to deploy sometimes overseas or to a different state. Now, if those deployment orders are longer than 90 days, you are able to terminate your lease without any penalty. Now, in order to actually terminate your lease, you have to submit a written letter to your landlord that has a copy of your orders, letting you know that you're either going to change duty stations or you're going to deploy. This will allow you to actually talk to your landlord, have the conversation of when you actually want to terminate your lease, depending on the date that you actually have to report to your next duty station or your deployment. In addition to terminating your home lease or house lease, you are actually able to terminate auto leases as well. However, this was a little bit more tricky. So for example, if you are an active duty member and you receive PCS orders to go to a different base, that does not fit the criteria for you to terminate your auto lease. in order to terminate your auto lease without any penalties or fees, you actually have to meet one of the three criteria. First one, prior to enter active duty, or you have been called for active duty for 180 days or more. Number two, you receive permanent change of station orders outside the United States. And the last one is having orders to deploy with your unit for 180 days or more. Now let's move on to number three. So let's go back to number two. Let's say you actually get orders to deploy for 180 days or more, and you decide to put all of your belongings in storage. Now, under the Service Member Civil Relief Act, storage companies cannot sell, foreclose, or keep your stuff due to non-payment. In order for them to do that, they actually have to file with the court and petition them the ability for them to do so. If they don't follow that rule, well, you know what that happens. Also, this benefit carries out 9 months after your actual active duty service, so you can have your stuff in there for a while before the storage company has to get a court order to evict you, sell your stuff, or actually keep them. Let's move on to number four. Service members have special protections against repossessions of their property. In some circumstances, the Service Member Civil Relief Act prohibits creditors from actually repossessing your personal property to include your vehicles. So that means if you violate your contract in any way, for example, not make your payments, the bank or the creditors must file a lawsuit against you, and the judge must grant them an order before they can actually repossess your personal items. This protection only applies if you purchase or lease the vehicle before you enter active duty, or you made a deposit or payment to a vehicle or that personal property before you enter active duty. So even though you are protected from the Service Member Civil Relief Act to not get your items repossessed without a court order, that doesn't mean that the creditors are unable to actually report all your missed payments to the credit bureaus, thus affecting your credit score, which can harm you in the long run. So instead, I recommend that you actually talk to your creditors, see if you can actually work something out beforehand before they report that to your credit bureaus that can harm you in the long term. Now let's move on to number five, the rule of six. Any debt that you acquire before entering active duty is eligible to be reduced by a maximum of 6%. If the debt is a mortgage, the interest rate reduction extends for 1 year after your active duty service. So the reduced interest rate actually applies to all your credit card debt, car loans, business obligation, and even your student loans. Now, although the interest rate cap is actually at 6%, there are actually some financial institutions that I know, such as Capital One, they actually reduce their interest rate to 4%. The reason why this was my favorite, you could actually save hundreds or even thousands of dollars in interest rate alone. For example, your credit card debt. Let's say you have $3,000 in credit card debt at the national average interest rate of 18% a year. Let's say you want to pay this debt off in 36 months or 3 years, which is the same. Your monthly payment will come out to $108, meaning that once you made all your payments, at the end of the 3 years, you have made a total payments of $3,904, meaning that you paid $904 in interest rate alone. Now let's use the same figures from the prior example, but this time we will use the Service Member Civil Relief Act benefits. So same thing, $3,000 in credit card debt. However, instead of the 18%, we can apply the maximum of 6% because of our benefits. And let's say it's the same thing, you want to pay it off for 36 months. Your monthly payment would be $91, meaning at the end of the 3 years, you will have paid a total of $3,285. Not only was your monthly payment lower than the previous example, you would have saved a total of $619 in interest rate alone. Now, in order to actually receive this benefits, you actually have to contact your financial institution. Now, each company have different processes and require different paperwork. So for example, some will actually require a copy of your orders stating the day that you actually enter active duty. There are some that would require a copy of your leave and earnings statement, which is basically your pay stub, or some will just require a verbal notice. However, a copy of your orders the day that you enter active duty should be sufficient enough to have these companies reduce your interest rate to the max of 6% or even better. I hope that this video helped you learn a little bit more about the Service Member Civil Relief Act and how you can use this information to better protect yourself and your family. And as always, go ahead and like the video, leave a comment below if you have any more questions, and have a good day.